The Arab millionaire was choking at dinner, and no one understood his desperate cries for help until the 7-year-old daughter of a waitress calmly approached and spoke perfect Arabic, saving his life. Before we dive into the story, leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Ahmed Al-Mansour had eaten at 5-star restaurants on 3 continents, but tonight he found himself at Rosie's Diner, a modest little place on Interstate 80 in Pine Valley, Colorado. The cracked vinyl booths and flickering neon sign weren't exactly his usual style, but his driver had recommended the place after his Mercedes broke down on the outskirts of town. The best apple pie this side of the Rio Grande, the mechanic had promised with a toothless smile. Ahmed loosened his Hermes tie and tried to blend in, though his tailored Italian suit made that nearly impossible. At 32, he had built a technology empire worth $300 million. But tonight, he just wanted to be anonymous. Just another traveler passing through the heart of America. The waitress who approached his table looked exhausted. Her name tag said Isabel, and despite her tired smile, Ahmed noticed the worry lines around her eyes. She couldn't have been more than 28, but life had clearly been harder on her than it had been on him. "What can I bring you, honey?" she asked, refilling his water glass. Ahmed ordered the meatball special, and Isabel hurried off to serve other customers. The restaurant was busier than he'd expected for a Tuesday night. Truckers, local families, some teenagers sharing milkshakes, simple people living simple lives. Halfway through his meal, it began. First came the tightness in his chest, then the burning sensation spreading up his throat. Ahmed dropped his fork, clutching his chest as his breathing became labored. The room began to spin, and he could hear his heart pounding in his ears. "Help!" he gasped, his accent thick with panic. "Help me! I can't breathe!" Isabel rushed over, panic in her eyes. Sir, what's wrong?" Ahmed's English deteriorated as the anxiety attack intensified. His words became jumbled, mixing broken phrases with desperate gestures. "Medicine pocket, please," he panted, pointing frantically at his jacket, but his thick accent and distress made him nearly impossible to understand. The other customers gathered around, all talking at once, but no one comprehending his desperate pleas. Isabel knelt beside his chair, her hands shaking as she tried to help, but Ahmed's panicked, broken English made no sense to her. "Should I call 911? Someone shouted. "He's having some kind of attack. I can't understand what he's saying." Ahmed's vision blurred as he felt consciousness slipping away. His medication was right there in his jacket pocket, the pills that controlled his severe anxiety attacks, but he couldn't make anyone understand through his thick accent and panic. Then, through the chaos, came a small, clear voice. "He needs his medicine. It's in his pocket." Everyone turned to see a girl with dark braids standing beside the table. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, wearing a faded princess dress and carrying a coloring book. "Sir," she said gently, her voice calm and clear, "you're having a panic attack. Your medicine is in your jacket pocket, right? 2 pills under the tongue." Ahmed's eyes widened as this child spoke to him with perfect understanding, somehow cutting through his panic and accent to comprehend what the adults could not. She reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the small bottle of pills, reading the label with the confidence of someone far beyond her years. 2 pills under the tongue," she announced to the room, then gently helped Ahmed take his medication. "Just breathe slowly, through your nose, out your mouth. You're going to be okay." As his breathing slowly returned to normal, Ahmed stared at this impossible child who had just saved his life. She had spoken to him with such clarity and understanding, as if she could see through his panic to what he needed. "How did you know?" he whispered, his voice still shaky. Valentina smiled, a gap-toothed grin that reminded him of the mechanic. "My neighbor, Mr. Chang, has panic attacks sometimes. I've seen them before." Then she surprised everyone by switching effortlessly between languages. "Languages help me understand people better. You speak beautiful English, but when you're scared, your accent gets stronger. That's normal." Before anyone could respond, she demonstrated her remarkable gift, counting to 10 in what sounded like Mandarin, then Italian, then French, translating each phrase back to English for the amazed crowd. "Valentina!" Isabel rushed over, her face a mixture of relief and bewilderment. "Sweetheart, how did you know what to do?" "I listen to people, Mom," Valentina said simply. "Languages are like music. Everyone has their own rhythm." Ahmed looked from the remarkable child to her exhausted mother, pieces of a puzzle beginning to form in his mind. A 7-year-old linguistic genius in the middle of nowhere, a mother working herself to death in a small-town restaurant, and a child with more wisdom than most adults he knew. "Ma'am," he said to Isabel, his voice still shaky but his English clear again. "We need to talk." 20 minutes later, the restaurant had emptied except for Ahmed, Isabel, and Valentina, who was coloring in a nearby booth. Ahmed had insisted on paying for everyone's meals as thanks, to Isabel's great embarrassment and the other customers' delight who had witnessed the drama. "You really don't need to do this, Mr." Isabel hesitated, realizing she didn't know his name. "Al-Mansour. Ahmed Al-Mansour. And yes, I do need to do this." He leaned forward, his eyes serious. "Your daughter saved my life tonight. That medication, without it, I could have had a heart attack from the panic attack." Isabel looked nervously at Valentina, who seemed absorbed in her coloring book, but was clearly listening to every word. The child had an uncanny ability to appear distracted while actually being hyper-aware of adult conversations, a skill Isabel had noticed developing over the past few years. "She's always been different, smart beyond her years," Isabel said carefully, unconsciously lowering her voice. "Different doesn't begin to cover it." Ahmed kept his tone equally low. "I've traveled to 43 countries, Isabel. I speak 5 languages myself, and I've done business with some of the most educated people in the world. I've never met anyone, adult or child, who could switch between languages like that with such perfect pronunciation and cultural understanding. How long has she been able to do this?" Isabel's hands twisted in her apron, a nervous habit she'd developed during her marriage to Valentina's father. "Since she was 4, maybe earlier. But that's when I first really noticed. She just absorbs things." She hesitated, looking around the empty restaurant as if checking for eavesdroppers. "There's this elderly man, Mr. Chang, who lives in the trailer park where we stay. He's from China, has been lonely since his wife died last year. Valentina started visiting him when she was 5, just being kind, like she is with everyone. Within weeks, she was speaking Mandarin like she was born to it." Ahmed's eyebrows rose. "Weeks? That's when I realized it wasn't normal. Then she met Mrs. Rodriguez at the grocery store, started speaking Spanish. The librarian, Mrs. Dumont, moved here from France 5 years ago. Valentina absorbed French from her in a month. It's like she's hungry for languages, hungry for connection." Ahmed studied the young mother more carefully. Her uniform was clean but worn, carefully mended in places. Her shoes had been resoled multiple times, and there was a deep tiredness in her eyes that spoke of more than just a long shift. This was a woman carrying the weight of impossible choices. "Tell me about your situation, Isabel. Your real situation, please." From the booth behind them came Valentina's voice, small but strangely perceptive. "Mom works 3 jobs. Sometimes she cries when she thinks I'm sleeping because the bills come faster than the money." Isabel's face crumpled, years of carefully maintained composure finally cracking. "Valentina, honey, it's okay. Mom, the nice man wants to help. I can tell by his voice patterns and the way he's leaning forward. He's genuinely concerned, not just curious." Ahmed felt something shift in his chest, a tightness that had nothing to do with his anxiety condition and everything to do with recognizing suffering he might be able to alleviate. 3 jobs? He asked gently. Isabel nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Isabel looked like she wanted to disappear into the cracked vinyl booth, but Ahmed's patient, non-judgmental expression encouraged her to continue. "I work here 5 nights a week from 6 to 2 in the morning. Then I clean offices downtown 3 mornings a week starting at 5 a.m. And on weekends, I do laundry and cleaning for the Mountain View Motel on the highway." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "Valentina's father, Roberto, left when she was 2, said he couldn't handle a baby, much less one who was—" She looked at Valentina, choosing her words carefully. "Special. He said having a child who was smarter than him made him feel stupid, and he wasn't going to live feeling stupid every day. Mom thinks I don't remember him," Valentina said, without looking up from her incredibly detailed coloring, a geometric pattern that would challenge most adults. "But I do remember. He was scared of me. He used to get angry when I repeated things he said in the same voice, or when I corrected his grammar. I was just little, but I could tell that words mattered to people." The simple statement hit Ahmed like a physical blow. A father intimidated and threatened by his own daughter's brilliant gifts instead of celebrating them. "The thing is," Isabel continued, her voice gaining strength as she talked about Valentina, "she needs so much more than I can give her. She should be in advanced programs, working with language teachers, maybe even taking college courses. But those programs cost money we don't have. The public school here barely has resources for normal children, much less gifted children." Ahmed finished. "Genius children," Isabel corrected quietly. "Because that's what she is, isn't it? A genuine genius. And I'm holding her back with my 3 jobs and our tiny trailer and our barely making rent life. Every day I see her get a little more frustrated with the limited world I can provide." Ahmed watched Valentina carefully color within the lines of what appeared to be a mandala pattern inspired by multiple cultural traditions. Definitely not something from a typical children's coloring book. As she worked, she hummed softly, and he realized she was humming folk melodies from different countries, switching between them as naturally as breathing, each melody perfectly authentic. "Valentina," he called softly, "where did you learn those songs?" She looked up, her dark eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Mrs. Dumont taught me the French one. It's about a nightingale. Mr. Chang shared the Chinese melody. It's about missing home. Mrs. Rodriguez taught me the Spanish lullaby her grandmother used to sing. Music and language are cousins, you know. They both carry feelings between people." The profound simplicity of the statement left Ahmed speechless. This child wasn't just linguistically gifted. She understood the deeper emotional and cultural purpose of communication itself. "What does Valentina want to be when she grows up?" he asked Isabel. "She says she wants to help people understand each other better," Isabel replied, pride and sadness mixing in her voice. "She says the world has too much confusion and conflict because people can't talk to each other properly, can't understand what others really mean." Valentina put her crayon aside and looked directly at Ahmed. "Languages are like bridges," she said with surprising seriousness. "They connect people who would otherwise be islands. But most people only know how to build one bridge, so they can only reach the islands closest to them. I want to build all the bridges." The profound wisdom from such a young voice left Ahmed momentarily stunned. "Isabel," Ahmed said carefully, "what if I told you there might be a way to help Valentina reach her full potential without you having to sacrifice everything you've worked for?" Isabel's expression immediately became cautious. Years of disappointment having taught her to be suspicious of promises that seemed too good to be true. "Mr. Al-Mansour, we appreciate your kindness tonight. We really do. But we can't accept charity. I work for what we have, and I teach Valentina that we earn our way in this world." "What if it wasn't charity?" Ahmed asked. "What if it was a legitimate business investment in the most extraordinary linguistic talent I've ever encountered?" He pulled out his phone, navigating to his company profile and sliding it across the table to Isabel. "I own Al-Mansour Technologies. We develop translation software, cultural communication platforms, and language learning applications used by governments and corporations worldwide. What Valentina can do naturally, understand not just words, but cultural context, emotional subtext, and the deeper meaning behind communication, we spend millions of dollars trying to replicate artificially." Isabel stared at the screen, her eyes widening as she scrolled through the company information, client testimonials, financial reports. You're really worth hundreds of millions of dollars, among other things. But right now, I'm a man who recognizes extraordinary potential when I see it. And more importantly, I'm someone who understands what it's like to have gifts that the world around you doesn't know how to nurture. Ahmed leaned forward earnestly. I want to offer Valentina a full scholarship to the Gifted Minds Academy in California. It's a school specifically designed for exceptionally gifted children, where she would have access to language teachers from top universities, cultural immersion programs, and advanced learning opportunities that would challenge her incredible mind. No! Isabel's voice was sharp and immediate. Absolutely not! Valentina looked up from her coloring, confused and a little hurt. We're not sending you away, baby. We're a family. We stick together no matter what. Ahmed raised his hands peacefully. I'm not suggesting you send her away alone. The scholarship would include housing for both of you in California, plus a position for you at our West Coast office. You'd have full benefits, a real salary that would let you work one job instead of 3, and Valentina would receive the education she deserves. Isabel was quiet for a moment, and Ahmed could see the internal battle unfolding on her face. Hope fighting with skepticism, love for her daughter fighting with fear of the unknown. There's more, Ahmed continued gently. Valentina would also work part-time as a consultant for our translation and cultural communication projects, age-appropriate paid work that would let her use her gifts to help our clients communicate better across cultural barriers. She'd be helping people understand each other while earning money for her future education. Valentina put her crayon down completely now, her full attention on the conversation. You mean I could help people understand each other for real? Not just here in our little town, but everywhere, all over the world. Valentina, your gift could help millions of people communicate better, prevent misunderstandings that lead to conflicts, help families separated by language barriers connect with each other. Isabel was studying Ahmed's face intently, looking for signs of deception or hidden motives. Why? Why would you do this for complete strangers? What do you really get out of it? Ahmed thought about his own childhood, rich beyond most people's dreams but emotionally impoverished. Parents too busy building their empire to notice their son's panic attacks starting at 12. The isolation of being surrounded by people who wanted something from him instead of caring about who he really was. Because everyone deserves a chance to reach their full potential regardless of their circumstances. And because tonight your daughter saved my life, let me try to help save hers from being wasted in a system that can't recognize or nurture her extraordinary gifts. And doom, but as the words left his mouth, Ahmed noticed something that made his blood run cold. A black sedan with tinted windows had pulled up outside the restaurant, and 2 men in expensive suits were getting out, moving with the purposeful stride of people on a mission. His corporate rivals had found him. Mr. Al-Mansour, one of the men, entered the restaurant, his smile cold and professionally threatening. He was tall, graying hair, with the kind of expensive grooming that screamed corporate power. Mitchell Carter, Senior Vice President of Acquisition for Global Tech Industries. We need to have a conversation. Ahmed's blood chilled. Global Tech Industries was his biggest competitor, a massive corporation that had been trying to buy out his company for the past 8 months through increasingly aggressive tactics. The fact that they had tracked him to this small Colorado town meant they were more desperate and more dangerous than he'd thought. Gentlemen, as you can see, I'm in the middle of a personal conversation about hiring a child as a consultant. Carter's smile became predatory as he gestured toward Valentina. Interesting business practice. I wonder what the Department of Labor would think about that. Child labor laws are pretty strict these days. Isabel instinctively moved closer to Valentina, who had gone very quiet but was watching the men with the intense observational skills Ahmed had already witnessed. He realized with growing horror that his generous offer might have just put this innocent family directly in the crosshairs of a corporate war they never asked to be part of. There's nothing illegal about educational opportunities and age-appropriate consulting work, Ahmed said carefully, trying to keep his voice level. Of course not, but there might be issues about a foreign national offering to relocate an American family across state lines for employment purposes. Immigration Services gets very nervous about that sort of thing, especially when it involves children. Carter's implied threat was crystal clear, and his companion, a younger man with cold eyes, was already taking pictures of Valentina with his phone. Valentina suddenly stood up, walking over to the men with the fearless curiosity of a child who didn't yet understand that some adults were genuinely dangerous. "You're speaking English perfectly," she said, tilting her head with that characteristic analytical expression. "But your body language is saying something completely different. In Japan, they have a concept called tatame, the difference between what you say in public and what you actually mean." Carter looked down at her, clearly surprised by her directness and sophistication. "Excuse me, little girl. Oh, you're trying to scare my friend Ahmed and my mommy," Valentina continued with factual precision. "But you're scared too. I can tell by the way you're standing, weight shifted back, ready to leave quickly. Your voices get higher when you talk about laws, which means you're not sure about what you're saying. And your friend keeps looking at the door like he's expecting someone else to come in." The second man stepped forward aggressively. "Kid, you should mind your own..." In Arabic, Valentina smoothly switched languages, speaking directly to Ahmed. "There's a phrase, al-haqiqa fi al-ayn. The truth shows in the eyes. These men's eyes are worried because they know they shouldn't be here." Carter's composed facade cracked slightly. "How does a child in the middle of nowhere—" "Valentina!" Isabel called urgently, fear making her voice sharp. "Come back here right now!" But Valentina wasn't finished. She looked directly at Ahmed and spoke rapidly in what sounded like Mandarin, then Italian, then back to English. "I told you in 3 languages that these men got here too fast after you made your calls earlier. They were already watching you somehow, or listening to your conversations." Ahmed's eyes widened in understanding. His phone calls to arrange potential opportunities for Valentina. Someone had been monitoring his communications, tracking his movements. Carter stepped closer to Ahmed, dropping any pretense of civility. "We'll be in touch very soon, Al-Mansour, and we'll be keeping very close watch on your new interests. Talented children can be so vulnerable to exploitation, don't you think?" When the men left, Ahmed realized that his simple desire to help had just made Isabel and Valentina targets in a corporate war they never asked to be part of, and the stakes had become much higher than money. After the men left, the restaurant felt smaller, more vulnerable, as if the very walls had been compromised. Isabel held Valentina protectively while Ahmed paced behind the counter, running his hands through his hair and cursing himself for his naivety. "I'm sorry," he said, genuine anguish in his voice. "I never meant to put you in danger. I thought I was offering help, not painting a target on your backs." "Who were those men, really?" Isabel asked, her voice tight with the kind of fear that comes from being genuinely powerless. "I mean, I know you said competitors, but what do they actually want?" Ahmed sat heavily, suddenly looking older than his 32 years. "Global Tech Industries has been trying to destroy my company for months. They want to force a buyout because our translation technology is years ahead of theirs, and they're losing contracts to us every quarter. They've tried corporate espionage, legal harassment, even tried to poach my key employees with ridiculous offers." He looked at Valentina, who was listening with an intensity that reminded him again of how extraordinary her mind was. "Now they see Valentina as either a weapon they can use against me, threatening her to force me to sell, or a potential asset they want to control for themselves. A child who can do naturally what costs us millions to approximate artificially. She's invaluable." Valentina tugged at her mother's sleeve, her expression more serious than any 7-year-old's should be. "Mom, remember what happened to Mr. Chang last month when those suit men came asking questions about his inventions?" Isabel's face paled. "What about Mr. Chang, baby?" He had to move away suddenly. He told me that some companies don't like it when smart people don't work for them, so they make life hard until those people have no choice. Valentina's voice was factual, but there was a wisdom in her eyes that spoke of conversations with adults who tried to protect her innocence while preparing her for harsh realities. The implication hit Ahmed like a hammer. This wasn't the first time global tech industries had pressured potential assets in this small town. Valentina was already on their radar. "How many other people like Mr. Chang have you met?" Ahmed asked gently. Valentina thought for a moment. 3 others. Mrs. Petrov was a scientist from Russia. She moved away after men came asking about her research. Dr. Kim was working on some kind of medical device in his garage. And there was a younger man, maybe college age, who was really good with computers. Ahmed's blood ran even colder. Global Tech wasn't just targeting his company. They were systematically identifying and pressuring anyone with valuable intellectual property or unique talents in small communities where people were vulnerable and had few resources to fight back. "We need to leave," Ahmed said urgently. "Tonight. If they're willing to track me to a small-town restaurant and they've been monitoring this area for potential assets, they won't hesitate to escalate the pressure once I'm gone." "Leave." Isabel's voice cracked with the sound of a life being uprooted again. "This is our home, our life. Valentina has friends here, people who care about her. I have 3 jobs. I can't just abandon everything because some corporate bullies made threats." "Mom!" Valentina interrupted, her voice unusually serious for a 7-year-old. "Remember what you always tell me when I'm scared to try something new. Sometimes the bravest thing is knowing when to start over and trusting that we're strong enough to build something better." Ahmed pulled out his phone, then hesitated. If Global Tech was monitoring his communications, every call he made could put them in more danger and give his pursuers more information to use against them. Valentina seemed to read his mind, with that uncanny perception he was beginning to recognize as one of her most remarkable traits. "Mr. Chang taught me something important before he left," she said quietly. "He said, when powerful people are listening, sometimes you have to speak in ways they don't understand and use connections they don't know about." She walked over to the old payphone in the corner of the restaurant. Something Ahmed hadn't even noticed still worked, and to his amazement began speaking rapid, fluent Mandarin to someone on the other end. The conversation lasted several minutes, with Valentina occasionally switching to what sounded like Korean and then back to Mandarin. When she hung up and returned to the table, her expression was calm but determined. "My friend Li Wei's father runs a network for people who need to disappear quickly and safely. He says there's a place we can go tonight where we'll be protected while we figure out our next steps, but we have to decide right now." Ahmed stared at this remarkable child, who apparently had international connections he couldn't have imagined. "Valentina, exactly how many people in this town do you really know? And how many of them have had to deal with situations like this before?" Valentina's smile was mysterious and too mature for her years. "More than you think. And most of them have been waiting for the right moment to help me get out of this place safely. Some of us have been planning for this day longer than you might expect." Isabel looked between her daughter and Ahmed, a growing realization crossing her face. "This isn't the first time someone has tried to exploit your gifts, is it, baby?" Valentina shook her head solemnly. "But it might be the first time we have a real chance to stay ahead of them and build something better." Outside, multiple sets of headlights appeared in the distance, moving slowly but deliberately toward the restaurant. "Decision time," Ahmed said grimly. But he was beginning to understand that Valentina had been preparing for this moment much longer than any of them had realized. The back door of Rosie's diner opened silently, and a small Asian woman entered. She moved with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to dangerous situations, her eyes immediately assessing exits and potential threats. "Valentina," she said softly in Mandarin. "It's time." Valentina clutched her coloring book and stood without hesitation. "Mom, this is Mrs. Lin. She helped Mr. Chang when he had to leave." Isabel looked between the stranger and her daughter, reality sinking in. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since I was 5, Valentina said simply. "Mrs. Lin taught me that smart people sometimes have to disappear before bad people can hurt them. She said I should always be ready." Mrs. Lin spoke rapidly in Mandarin to Valentina, who nodded and translated for Ahmed and Isabel. "She says, global tech industries has systematically targeted exceptional individuals in small communities throughout the Southwest for 3 years. They identify people with valuable skills, then use pressure tactics to force compliance or drive them out if they refuse cooperation." Ahmed felt sick. "How many people?" 47 that we know of, Mrs. Lin said, in accented but clear English. "Scientists, inventors, linguists, mathematicians, computer programmers, anyone whose talents could be monetized. Your Valentina has been on their watch list since she was 6. Isabel's legs gave out and she sank into a booth. 6 years old, she was just a baby. A baby who could already speak 4 languages fluently and was demonstrating pattern recognition abilities that surpassed most adults. Mrs. Lin continued gently. "We have been protecting her, preparing escape routes, building networks. Tonight became necessary earlier than we expected." Valentina walked over to her mother and took her hand. "It's okay, Mum. Mrs. Lin and her friends have helped lots of families. They have a safe place where we can figure out what to do next." Through the front windows of the restaurant, Ahmed could see more headlights approaching. At least 3 vehicles this time. Mrs. Lin noticed immediately. "They're escalating. Everyone needs to move now." She led them toward the back exit, speaking into a small radio in rapid Korean. When they stepped out into the alley behind the restaurant, Ahmed was astonished to see a small convoy waiting. 2 discreet minivans and an old pickup truck, all with engines running and lights off. "Separation protocol," Mrs. Lin explained efficiently. "Ahmed, you go in the first van with Mr. Park. Isabel and Valentina in the second van with Mrs. Gonzalez. If one vehicle is captured, the others can escape." "No," Isabel said firmly, clutching Valentina. "We stay together." Valentina squeezed her mother's hand. "Mrs. Lin is right, Mom. If something goes wrong, you need to be safe so you can find me later. I'll be okay for a little while." The wisdom and courage in such a young voice broke Ahmed's heart, even as it amazed him. As they prepared to separate, Valentina pulled a small notebook from her pocket and handed it to Ahmed. "If we get separated, this has ways to contact people who can help. But be careful, some of the contacts are in code." Ahmed flipped through pages covered with what looked like children's drawings. But looking closer, he realized they were actually sophisticated maps, contact information in multiple languages, and what appeared to be communication protocols. "Valentina," he whispered. "What are you?" She smiled, still the gap-toothed grin of a 7-year-old, but with eyes that had seen too much. "Someone who has been preparing for tonight her whole life." The sound of car doors slamming at the front of the restaurant ended their conversation. 2 hours later, Ahmed found himself in what appeared to be an ordinary suburban house in Boulder, Colorado. But as Mrs. Gonzalez led him through the house, he realized it was anything but ordinary. Hidden behind bookshelves were computer terminals, monitoring dozens of communication channels. The basement had been converted into a high-tech communication center that would have impressed his own company's IT department. "Welcome to Station 7, said a familiar voice behind him. Ahmed turned to see Mr. Chang, the elderly Chinese man Valentina had mentioned. But this wasn't a frail retiree living in a trailer park. This was a man with sharp, intelligent eyes and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Dr. Chang Li Wei, formerly of MIT's Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, the man introduced himself formally. "Though in Pine Valley, I was just the lonely old man who befriended a remarkable little girl." Ahmed's mind reeled. "You're Dr. Chang, the quantum computing pioneer who disappeared 5 years ago." "Disappeared is relative. I relocated when certain corporations became too interested in my work, but I've been far from inactive." Dr. Chang gestured around the sophisticated setup. We've built a network to protect and evacuate exceptional individuals who find themselves targeted by corporate predators. We, Dr. Chang smiled, Mrs. Lin holds 3 PhDs in linguistics and was a United Nations translator before Global Tech forced her into hiding. Mrs. Gonzalez is a former FBI cybersecurity specialist. Mr. Park was a surgeon in Seoul before pharmaceutical companies tried to steal his medical innovations. Ahmed sank into a chair, overwhelmed. You're all hidden geniuses, forced underground by the same systematic exploitation that now threatens Valentina. Dr. Chang finished. But we've learned to use our abilities to protect others like us. A secure phone rang, and Dr. Chang answered with obvious concern. After a brief conversation in Mandarin, he hung up with a grim expression. Complication. Global Tech Industries has filed emergency custody papers claiming that Valentina is being trafficked across state lines by her mother and a foreign national, you. They have a court order and are working with local police. Ahmed's blood turned to ice. They can't just... They can and they are. Global Tech has lawyers, money, and government connections. They're using the legal system as a weapon. Dr. Chang paused. There's more. They've identified the location where Isabel and Valentina are hiding. Our people are moving them, but it's going to be close. Where are they taking her? Dr. Chang hesitated. Somewhere that even we might not be able to reach her if they succeed. Where? Ahmed, there's something about Valentina you need to understand, something we've discovered over the past 2 years of watching and protecting her. What? Her abilities aren't just exceptional, they're unprecedented. In documented linguistic history, no one has ever demonstrated her combination of rapid language acquisition, cultural intuition, and communication analysis. She doesn't just learn languages, she understands the deep structural patterns that connect all human communication. Ahmed felt a chill of premonition. You're saying she's unique. I'm saying she may be the most linguistically gifted human being who has ever lived. And Global Tech Industries isn't just trying to exploit her talents. They're trying to study her brain, to reverse engineer her abilities for artificial intelligence applications. The room fell silent as the full horror of the situation became clear. They don't just want to hire her, Ahmed whispered. They want to dissect her mind. Dr. Chang nodded grimly. And they're willing to destroy anyone who tries to stop them. The call came at 3 in the morning. Ahmed woke with a start in the guest room of the safe house to find Dr. Chang standing over him, the man's face pale with urgency. They have Isabel. Ahmed bolted upright. What? How? Legal kidnapping. Global Tech's lawyers convinced a judge that Isabel was an unfit mother, endangering her child by fleeing with a foreign national. They executed the custody order 2 hours ago. Isabel is being held pending a competency hearing. And Valentina? Dr. Chang's voice cracked slightly. Valentina is missing. Missing how? During the chaos of separating her from Isabel, she escaped from our protection team. A 7-year-old girl disappeared into the Colorado wilderness in the middle of the night, and we have no idea where she is. Ahmed was putting on his clothes before Dr. Chang finished speaking. What aren't you telling me? Dr. Chang hesitated. This isn't the first time Valentina has disappeared when cornered. Last year, when social services investigated educational neglect because she wasn't in traditional school, she vanished for 3 days. We found her eventually, but she had somehow made contact with a network of people we'd never heard of. Street children, runaways, underground communities. She has survival skills that... He shook his head. That no 7-year-old should possess. You think she was preparing for this? I think Valentina has been preparing for things we can't even imagine. Downstairs in the communication center, the team was in crisis mode. Multiple screens showed tracking data, news feeds, and intercepted communications. Mrs. Lin was coordinating with contacts in 3 states, while Mrs. Gonzalez monitored police frequencies. Update, Dr. Chang demanded. Mrs. Gonzalez looked up from her computers. Global Tech has mobilized a massive search operation. They're calling it a missing child recovery operation, but they have professional tracking teams, heat detection drones, and corporate security forces that look more like military units. They're not just searching for her. They're systematically shutting down every safe house and contact in our network, Mrs. Lin added grimly. Somehow, they knew exactly where to strike. We've lost communication with stations in Nevada, Utah, and New Mexico. Ahmed felt the walls closing in. They had inside information. Or, Dr. Chang said quietly, Valentina led them to us deliberately. Everyone in the room turned to stare at him. What are you saying? Ahmed demanded. I'm saying that for 2 years we've been protecting a child who may be more strategically sophisticated than all of us combined. What if Valentina didn't disappear by accident? What if she's planned something none of us anticipated? Mrs. Lin's secure phone chimed with an encrypted message. She read it and paled. What? Dr. Chang asked. Message from an unknown sender, but using Valentina's personal code phrases. Mrs. Lin read from the screen. The bridges are burning, but I'm building new ones. Don't look for me where they expect. Look where language began. The desert remembers everything. Signed, your smallest diplomat. Ahmed stared at the cryptic message. Where language began. Dr. Chang was already moving toward a wall map of Colorado. There's an ancient Native American site about 40 miles northeast of here. Archaeological evidence suggests it was used for intertribal communication and translation for over 1,000 years. Different tribes would meet there to negotiate trade and, he paused, understanding dawning in his eyes, and teach their children to speak with strangers. Outside, the distant sound of helicopters grew steadily louder. The helicopter's searchlights swept the desert like a mechanical lightning bolt. But Dr. Chang's modified SUV was running dark, its engine silenced and heat signature masked by technology that definitely wasn't standard automotive equipment. Satellite imagery shows massive activity around the archaeological site, Mrs. Gonzalez reported from her mobile command setup in the back seat. Global Tech has 3 teams converging on the location, plus air support. Ahmed gripped the dashboard as they navigated by night vision toward the ancient communication site. If Valentina is really there, she's walking into a trap. Or, Dr. Chang said grimly, she's setting one. They crested a ridge and saw the site below, a natural amphitheater of red rock formations that had sheltered human gatherings for millennia. But tonight, it was lit up like a military operation. Corporate security teams with tactical equipment were surrounding the area while helicopters circled overhead. In the center of it all, barely visible in the harsh artificial light, was a small figure sitting calmly on an ancient stone platform. "Valentina, my God!" Ahmed breathed. "She's just sitting there." Dr. Chang pulled out high-powered binoculars and focused on the scene below. "She's not alone." Ahmed took the binoculars and adjusted the focus. Around Valentina, barely visible in the shadows beyond the security lights, were dozens of people, men, women, children, all sitting in concentric circles around the ancient platform. As his eyes adjusted, he realized with shock that he recognized some of them. That's Mrs. Rodriguez from the grocery store, and the librarian, Mrs. Dumont. But who are all the others? Dr. Chang was staring at the scene with growing amazement. "I think we're seeing everyone Valentina has ever taught, learned from, or helped, but this is impossible. There must be 100 people down there." Mrs. Gonzalez was picking up radio communications from the global tech teams. They're confused. The security teams can't figure out what they're dealing with. They came expecting to capture a child and instead found what looks like some kind of gathering. Through the binoculars, Ahmed watched as Mitchell Carter himself walked into the circle of light, flanked by armed security personnel. Even at a distance, Ahmed could see the man's growing confusion and anger. Then, Valentina stood on the ancient stone platform and began to speak. Her voice carried impossibly well in the desert air, amplified by the natural acoustics of the rock formation. But she wasn't speaking English. She was speaking what sounded like multiple languages simultaneously. Phrases in Spanish, flowing into Mandarin, flowing into Arabic, flowing into languages Ahmed didn't even recognize. And incredibly, The people around her were responding. Each person seemed to understand her perfectly, regardless of what language she was using at any given moment. "She's not just translating," Dr. Chang whispered in awe. "She's creating universal communication. She's found a way to speak to everyone at the same time in their own language, while maintaining a single coherent message." Carter was shouting commands, but his security team seemed paralyzed. They had trained to capture fugitives, not to confront what appeared to be some kind of international diplomatic gathering in the middle of the Colorado desert. Then, Valentina did something that made Ahmed's blood run cold. She looked directly at their hiding spot on the ridge and waved. "She knows we're here," Mrs. Gonzalez said unnecessarily. "She knew we'd be coming all along," Dr. Chang replied. "The question is, what has she planned for us to see?" Valentina spoke again, and this time her voice somehow reached them clearly across the distance. She was speaking perfect English now, her words carrying an authority that seemed impossible from someone so young. "Mr. Carter," she called out, "you came here to capture me because you think I'm valuable, but you don't understand what makes me valuable, or why so many people are willing to protect me." Carter moved closer to the platform, his confusion evident even from their distant vantage point. "Valentina Martinez, by order of the court." "My name," Valentina interrupted, her young voice somehow commanding the attention of everyone present, "is not Valentina Martinez." The words hung in the desert air like a physical presence. "My name is Valentina Lynn Rodriguez Chang Dumont Martinez. I'm the daughter of everyone who taught me, the student of everyone who learned from me, and the bridge between everyone who couldn't understand each other before I helped them." Ahmed felt the world shift around him as understanding dawned. "She's not just a gifted child," he whispered. "She's the center of an entire community. Every person down there isn't just protecting her, they're protecting the connections she created between them." Dr. Chang nodded slowly. "And now, Global Tech Industries is about to discover what happens when you threaten the heart of a network they never knew existed." Valentina's voice carried across the desert with impossible clarity, each word precisely articulated despite her youth. "Mr. Carter, you spent 2 years tracking exceptional individuals throughout the Southwest, forcing them from their homes, stealing their work, and breaking apart communities. Tonight, you're going to learn why that was a mistake." Carter stepped forward aggressively, his corporate authority finally overriding his confusion. "Valentina Martinez, you're coming with us. Your mother has been declared an unfit parent, and you are now a ward of the state pending placement in an appropriate educational facility." Educational facility. Valentina's laugh was both childlike and somehow ancient. "Mr. Carter, I have been educated by 100 teachers in a dozen languages. I learned quantum physics from Dr. Chang, cultural anthropology from Mrs. Lin, emergency medical procedures from Dr. Park, cybersecurity from Mrs. Gonzalez, and the deepest truths about human connection from every person sitting in this circle." She gestured to the people around her, and Ahmed realized with growing amazement that even more were arriving. Figures emerged from the desert darkness, some on foot, some in vehicles with lights off, all moving with the quiet purpose of people responding to a long-planned summons. "You see," Valentina continued, "when you force exceptional people out of their communities, you don't make them disappear. You make them find each other, and when they find each other, they do something you never expected." "What's that, little girl?" Carter's voice dripped condescension. "They teach their children." Dr. Chang grabbed Ahmed's arm. "Look at the people around her. Really look." Ahmed focused the binoculars more carefully. Among the adults in the circle were dozens of children, teenagers, pre-teens, and even some as young as Valentina. And as he watched, he realized they were all demonstrating abilities that defied explanation. A teenage boy was simultaneously translating Valentina's words into sign language, Morse code, and what looked like mathematical equations. A girl who couldn't have been more than 10 was drawing complex technical diagrams in the sand while maintaining perfect eye contact with the security teams. "It's not just Valentina," Ahmed breathed. She's part of an entire generation of gifted children who have been hidden and protected by this network. Mrs. Gonzalez's radio crackled with frantic communications from global tech security teams. They're requesting immediate backup. They say the situation is beyond current operational parameters. Carter was screaming into his own radio, his corporate composure finally cracking. I don't care how it looks. One little girl can't possibly... His words were cut off as every child in the circle stood simultaneously and began to speak. But they weren't speaking in English or Spanish or any single language. They were creating a chorus of communication that somehow transcended individual languages entirely. A form of expression that conveyed meaning directly from mind to mind. And impossibly, Ahmed found he understood them perfectly. They were telling the story of every person who had been forced from their home, every family separated by corporate greed, every brilliant mind driven underground by systematic exploitation. They were weaving together the voices of refugees, immigrants, displaced scientists, persecuted inventors, and gifted children into a single narrative of resistance and human connection. They're not just speaking, Dr. Chang whispered in awe. They're creating a new form of communication in real time, a language of pure meaning that transcends traditional linguistic barriers. Carter's security teams were backing away from the circle, their weapons useless against an opponent they couldn't understand or categorize. Even the helicopters overhead seemed to hesitate, their searchlights wavering as if uncertain what they were illuminating. Valentina stepped down from the ancient platform and walked directly toward Carter, her small figure somehow commanding the attention of everyone present. You wanted to study my brain, Mr. Carter. You wanted to understand how I learn languages so quickly. She stopped just a few feet from the corporate executive, looking up at him with eyes that held no fear. The secret isn't in my brain, it's in my heart. What are you talking about? Every language I learned because I loved the person who taught me. Every connection I made because I cared about understanding what someone else needed to say. You can't steal that, Mr. Carter. You can't corporatize love. Carter stepped forward menacingly. Enough philosophy, little girl. You're coming with us, and these people are going to disperse immediately, or we'll have everyone arrested for interfering with a legal custody order. Valentina smiled. The same gap-toothed, innocent smile Ahmed had first seen at Rosie's diner, but now he understood it differently. It wasn't the smile of a child. It was the smile of someone who had waited her entire short life for this exact moment. Mr. Carter, she said softly, you should probably answer your phone. Carter's satellite phone began to ring. The sound echoed through the desert silence like a death knell for everything global tech industries thought they knew about power, control, and the true nature of human connection. Carter's hands shook as he answered the satellite phone, his corporate composure finally cracking under the pressure of the impossible situation surrounding him. Carter here, he barked into the device. The voice that emerged from the speaker was crisp, authoritative, and utterly damning. Mr. Carter, this is Director Sarah Chen of the FBI's Corporate Crimes Division. You and your teams need to withdraw immediately. Carter's face paled in the harsh artificial light. Director Chen, I don't know what you think you're seeing, but we have legal authority. What I'm seeing, Mr. Carter, is an international live broadcast that has been watched by over 50 million people in the last hour. Director Chen's voice cut through his protests like a blade. The entire world is watching your corporate security teams threaten a 7-year-old girl and a peaceful gathering of families. Ahmed gripped Dr. Chang's arm as understanding dawned. She planned this. Valentina planned all of this. Through the binoculars, Ahmed could see Carter gesticulating frantically to his teams while continuing his phone conversation. But it was Director Chen's next words that made everything clear. Mr. Carter, at 23:47 hours tonight, we received a comprehensive data package containing evidence of systematic harassment, illegal surveillance, and corporate espionage by global tech industries targeting exceptional individuals in 17 states. The package included recorded conversations, financial records, and documentation of forced relocations dating back 3 years. Valentina approached Carter, her young voice carrying clearly through the desert air. The package also included detailed evidence of your attempts to gain illegal custody of children for corporate exploitation. Mr. Carter, my friends around the world have been very busy tonight. Carter spun to stare at the child who had somehow orchestrated his downfall. You're 7 years old. How could you possibly... I'm 7 years old and I have friends in 63 countries who speak 47 languages between them, Valentina replied calmly. Some of them are very good with computers. Others work for news organizations, governments, and international human rights agencies. When you threaten one of us, you threaten all of us. Director Chen's voice continued through the phone, now loud enough for everyone in the immediate area to hear. Mr. Carter, as of 1 hour ago, global tech industry's assets have been frozen pending a federal investigation. Your board of directors has voted to terminate your employment and cooperate fully with authorities. And frankly, sir, you're under arrest. FBI vehicles materialized from the desert darkness, their lights finally illuminating the true scope of what Carter had stumbled into. What he thought was a simple child recovery operation had become an international incident, and he was standing at the center of it with the world watching. But it was what happened next that truly took Ahmed's breath away. Valentina raised her hand, and every person in the gathering, adults and children alike, began to speak in unison. But they weren't speaking to Carter or the FBI agents or even to each other. They were speaking to cameras that Ahmed now realized had been hidden throughout the ancient site, broadcasting their message to the 50 million people watching around the world. My name is Valentina Lynn Rodriguez Chang Dumont Martinez, they said in dozens of languages simultaneously, the words somehow harmonizing despite their linguistic diversity. I am 7 years old, and I represent every child whose potential has been stolen, every family that has been separated by greed, and every brilliant mind that has been forced into hiding. The effect was mesmerizing. Each person spoke in their native language, but somehow the collective message was perfectly clear to anyone listening, regardless of their linguistic knowledge. They were creating communication that transcended traditional barriers, speaking directly to the human heart in a way that needed no translation. We are the bridges between worlds, the collective voice continued. We are the children of refugees who learned new languages to survive. The immigrants who carry multiple cultures in their hearts, the scientists who speak the universal language of discovery, and the teachers who help others find their voices. Ahmed felt tears streaming down his face as he finally understood the true scope of what Valentina had built. This wasn't just a network of gifted individuals hiding from corporate exploitation. This was a new kind of human community, one that transcended nationality, language, and traditional boundaries. You cannot buy us, threaten us, or silence us, the voices continued, because we are not separate people you can target individually. We are the future of human connection itself. FBI agents were handcuffing Carter and his security team, but Ahmed barely noticed. He was transfixed by the sight of Isabel suddenly appearing at the edge of the gathering, released from custody and running toward her daughter with tears of joy and relief. Valentina broke away from the collective and ran to her mother, finally becoming simply a 7-year-old child again as she threw herself into Isabel's arms. "Mom, you're safe." "Oh, baby," Isabel sobbed, holding her daughter tight. "I was so scared. I thought I'd lost you forever." "You can't lose me, Mom. I'm connected to too many people now. We take care of each other." Dr. Chang appeared at Ahmed's shoulder as they watched the reunion. "So, my friend, what will you do now? Your corporate problems are solved, but I suspect your life has been changed in ways you never expected." Ahmed lowered the binoculars and looked around at the extraordinary scene unfolding below. The ancient communication site was now filled with families reuniting, international media teams documenting the story. and FBI agents taking statements from people who had been hiding in fear for years. "I think," Ahmed said slowly, "I'm going to offer my company's resources to help Valentina and her network build something the world has never seen before." "Which is?" Ahmed smiled, thinking of a 7-year-old girl who had just demonstrated that love and connection were more powerful than any corporate empire. A way for every person on Earth to truly understand every other person, not just their words but their hearts. As dawn broke over the Colorado desert, Valentina stood on the ancient platform one more time. But this time, she wasn't alone. She was surrounded by her extended family, Isabel, Ahmed, Dr. Chang, and dozens of others who had found each other through her gift for building bridges between isolated souls. The world was watching, and for the first time in her short life, Valentina wasn't hiding her light. She was illuminating the path toward a future where no brilliant mind would ever have to hide again, and where the barriers between human hearts could finally be crossed by children brave enough to build bridges made of understanding, compassion, and love. "This is just the beginning," she whispered to Ahmed in perfect Arabic, then translated for everyone to hear. "The best stories always are." If this exciting story touched you as much as it touched me, click like. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that will touch your heart. Turn on the bell so you don't miss any. Tell me in the comments, do you believe that love can transform lives? Have you had an experience that completely changed your perspective? I want to hear your stories. And don't forget to share this video with that special person who needs to believe in second chances and the power of human connection. Until the next story, a heartfelt hug.